So good afternoon. Welcome again to the next of our webinar series. Today, the second one on today, then at noon, on network and industrial security, industrial cybersecurity, that is. While we are still waiting for our guest speaker to arrive, but I just had a word with him. He's on his way. Some challenges with the internet connectivity. Sometimes that happens still today, even under these harsh times. We're moving further towards doing a bit of the introductions here. So thanks for joining. This is the yet another webinar in the different series that we are having in network and information security. The series of webinars we started by now already a couple of weeks ago, specifically to help and to support our communities in the further development of everything that's concerning cybersecurity in many different aspects, and of course in this one, cybersecurity for industrial systems. It's a particular domain where we are trying to seek into the challenges of those legacy environments and IoT, industrial IoT, and to basically get an understanding of what is happening in that space in terms of new developments, new challenges, and new technologies popping up, whereby we can at least try to get some further insights on how to better secure them. We started as LSEC, as a not-for-profit association, about 2 decades ago as a spin-off of the University of Leuven, and we bring together the expertise of the different vendors, system integrators, and the academia in bringing the challenges of innovation in that space together. And we provide those insights towards about 15,000 end users on a weekly basis. So the webinars, we have today almost 5 a week of those, are specifically there to give a bit of an impression on what we otherwise would be doing in face-to-face events. So the today's developments are causing us to be a bit further away from each other, and making it easier in any case to accept that also over webinars we can share some ideas and contents and insights in new developments. In this development, I would say that I wanted to just highlight a couple of ideas in the developments of 5G. We had this morning a very interesting talk from China Mobile on their viewpoints of 5G. And as you can see here in the slide, they're indicating a 700 billion type of expected generated turnover, specifically coming from industrial manufacturing, utilizing 5G. And then there's a couple of others like energy and power, transport and logistics in any case as well. So which means that also definitely in the Asia Pacific markets, in China here in this case specifically, there will be quite a lot of expectations towards connecting industries, connecting manufacturing to that space. And taking that a step further, we can see that the way that the applications are being conceived is in very different components. So it's about robots, it's about connecting warehouse systems, it's connecting cameras in the first place. So many different systems that require a lot of data, a lot of throughput, but also lots of low latency and real-time activities. So having said this, I think that we are there for a future where the industry will be connected and will be highly connected, if I can say so, in the space of factory automation. We ourselves work together with quite a number of partners in Connected Factories 2, which is a European project that is looking to see how pathways exist on the further maturity of those types of manufacturing environments. And so what we see is that there's a maturity going forward from factories that have today still many Excel, Word, traditional types of systems, and moving slowly but surely into connected manufacturing execution systems, connecting their ERP systems and installing IoT and basically also big data environments all around. So we see those transformations happening, and of course that has an impact in security. So some time ago, we've launched a control framework specifically for digital platforms, and taking this into the domain of factories in the future, we see that there's actually quite a number of challenges and requirements which are from the traditional IT world quite known, but when it comes to industrial spaces and definitely legacy environments, those controls are not that visible yet, or are definitely not being managed appropriately. And so in the past webinars like this, we have talked about quite a number of challenges in relation to process and procedures, about IEC 62443 as a standard to support cybersecurity for industrial environments, and many others. So not to longer dwell on all of these. The topic of the day is really about cybercrime and the challenges in relation to this. And so putting things into perspective, I'm just showing a perspective from Europol based on the IOCTA that they publish on an annual basis. This one is the one from 2019, and where you can see that ransomware attacks are really on top of the focus area. So I think in 2017 we saw the biggest outbreaks, but they have just continued in 2018 and 19 and still today. And specifically here in Belgium as well, we have seen a couple of cases where this has happened. So I think one of the biggest ones that we saw was the one from Maersk Hydro. Serious impact in terms of cost of recovery, but also the organization itself has been severely impacted. We think that ransomware today is really a business. There was this survey done by the colleagues of G Data from Sophos that earlier was, I think 2 weeks ago, was put into the market, where about 5,000 organizations, IT representatives were interviewed, and about half of the organizations were hit by ransomware in 2020. And so of these organizations, there's actually quite a number of those in Europe. Belgium being actually already on the 4th place here in terms of 60% of those organizations that responded were hit by ransomware. So that's quite astonishing numbers. And if you see that 3/4 of ransomware attacks resulted in data being encrypted, so where the ransomware was effective, and so that means that there needs to be done quite a lot of cases and a lot of activities to that end. So last week we had Ralf talking about AI in our early morning sessions. Ralf, good afternoon. I'm glad that you could make it with some internet issues in the back end of your connection.
Yeah, it cost me some time, but
okay.
I made it now.
Welcome in any case. Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay.
Good afternoon and welcome, and thanks for joining us. So Ralf, you were so kind to offer us a bit of a perspective in the state of the art of ransomware, to call it maybe slightly different than we should call it otherwise, because I think there is some art in that development to be discovered, probably not by the ones that have been attacked by it. I think for you as researchers and as a company that's investigating malwares of all sorts, it's interesting likely to see how those ransomwares are developing. I'm handing over the word to you, Ralf. So please indulge us with your perspectives on ransomware for the next 45 minutes or so.
Okay. Yeah, so can you see my screen?
No, we can see you, but not yet your screen.
Okay, let me see. Where we are. Okay, so okay.
Yeah, now it's starting up. Yep.
Okay.
We can see your screen.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for having the opportunity to talk about ransomware. I call it evolution and state of the art because, yeah, I think it's always, I mean, yeah, it's good to have a wider scope. Okay, before we start, come on. I'm from G DATA. G DATA is a German company. This is how our campus is looking like. So we have on the upper left our building, our entrance and several things. So that's where we would meet if we would meet in person. G DATA is a provider of German IT security solutions. We've been doing this for over 35 years now. We were founded in 1985, created our first antivirus in 1987, which is the first we've ever heard of. This evolved by today to a wide range of security solutions and products, both in the consumer branch, that's where we come from, and also in the business branch, covering standard PC, Windows, and also Mac, Linux, Unix-based systems, Android, and so on. So that was there. We are currently about 500 employees, and our products are available worldwide. But our focus is, of course, on Germany and the German-speaking countries. That's where we are best situated. So 5 years ago, we founded subsidiary, a new company, a G DATA subsidiary called G DATA Advanced Analytics. And that came from the necessity to analyze incidents. That's something that came from my, that often came to my team, and so we got a lot of requests from customers. We have an incident, can you look at the files, can you help us? So we did that a few times just as a side product for the malware analysts, and they got some real world and in the field experience. But that became so much that we had to create a separate company, and this is the Advanced Analytics. And the range, the product and services they offer are not related to the G DATA antivirus products. They're independent from that. They're more into the range of security consulting, malware analysis, incident response, and security consulting comes after you managed an incident. People ask you, what can we do to prevent it for the next time? And once they've listened to your consults and implemented it, you can also do pen testing and auditing. That's another thing. But what also comes from it is awareness trainings and managed services, because that's also something that is very important in this area of solutions. So there's a wide range of services that are covered by Advanced Analytics, which are independent from the detection products and the technologies and the malware backend that we have beside it. My role in that whole business is that I founded the G DATA Security Labs in 2004. And have been leading it for 15 years, which means I stopped that 3 years ago, and I'm now responsible for research, cooperation, and technology partnerships. But my background is, of course, in the malware analysis, because we created the malware analysis systems, and in the protection technologies. That's also what we came up with, besides the scanning engines. We've always been working on dynamic and proactive solutions, and that's where my team came in. Okay, let's let's step into the into the topic of ransomware. Yeah, the dollar sign is what it's all about. But actually, the ransomware, that idea of ransomware, is not really new. The first known ransomware is the so-called AIDS Trojan, which goes back to 1989, which is more than 20 years ago. On a WHO conference, a disk with information about AIDS was distributed on a conference, it has an end user license agreement with it that says you have to pay to use that file. But okay, who reads EULAs? I mean, they look like that, and if you look closer here, you can see that there's a mandatory leasing fee for the use of these programs, which is $189 or $379. If you are not, these programs may affect other program applications, and you're hereby advised of the most serious consequences of your activities. So if you use it without paying, then the severe consequences are offered. And the guy behind it, J.L. Pop, was arrested 2 years after that. The payment was going to a post box in Panama. He was found 2 years later, and he got sentenced. So that's how all began. Then there were a few cases in between where people were thinking it's a good idea to extort people, but they were arrested 3 weeks after they started because they just didn't. They failed in following the money, or in hiding their traces, basically because of the money. And that changed for the first time in 2005, where we've seen a so-called GP coder. It's the first modern crypto malware. Uses RSA keys, and it's encrypting files with it's encrypting files with certain extensions. And then it leaves a note, attention.txt, where and the payment it contains the typical information. Your system has been encrypted. If you want your files back, get in touch with us by email, and depending on how nice you were and what kind of what kind of impression you left, you had to pay a few $100 or maybe 1,000. That depends. So GP coder is not only the first, but it also, it's one of the most. It's a very long-lasting group that is behind it. And when they started, the stuff they did was a 4-bit key, which was saved in the registry, and it was the same key for all files. So this is, it's hard to say that this is encryption, but then a year later they read some books about cryptography, and they were able to apply symmetric standards like 3DES and AES. And a year later, they came up with asymmetric asymmetric encryption with RC4 keys and RSA public keys. So they were all, yeah, so they learned their lesson and made some progress within the group. And this is something that happened later on. I'll come back to that in a minute. But in 2005, these file encryptors were quite uncommon. So a few years later, what came up very often, you may have seen that often, were these system blockers. They use the lock screen to block access to the PC. And they usually had access, they were usually related to websites that you visited before. Then they said you visited a website with illegal content or with child pornography, and if you don't want to be, and you have to pay a fine, which is in this case 100 euros. And so one of the anonymous payment possibilities at that time was Ucash, which was abused quite often. So you had to go to your gas station and buy a Ucash voucher and transfer the number of the voucher so that you can pay that 100 euros. And then afterwards the lock screen is removed. This thing did not only spread in Germany, it spread in all Europe and also in the United States. So it spread all over the world, and it came up with the same stuff again and again: illegal content, videos, pornography, stuff like that. People were accused of having done something bad, and they should pay for it. Yeah, that also worked for Android. So this is an Android lock screen. Yeah, if you want to release your system again, sometimes it helps to go to safe mode and remove the file. And what definitely helps is the same thing as it used to in the 80s when we had disks. Use a clean boot system. And this is actually what we did in an AC/DC project. We created a Linux-based boot CD, which booted into this clean system. Then looked up in the system for executables that used the lock screen, and they were removed, and this very successfully removed the infection. So quite yeah, not a big technology rocket science thing, but it's useful, and it helped and really mitigated mitigated that system blockers. Yeah, and so 2 years. So they were quite active in the 2010, 2011, and 2012. And in 2012, one of the most so that file encryption thing came up again with a malware called Cryptolocker. Cryptolocker was for quite a while the name for the whole category. So people today say Cryptolockers to everything that they refer to as file encryptors. So it's a brand name that is really very much established. So this, yeah. So they came up with a nice screen. If you click the files or the buttons here, then you proceed to the payment, and then you get information what the what the account number for the bitcoins is, and how to get that 0.5 bitcoins, which is something like 200, which used to be something like 200 euros at that time. So yeah, looks quite nice, was quite effective, and it became one of the blueprints for a trend that started in 2013. So I just wanted to, I don't want to go into the details about the names of these things. But if you look at the stuff that happened before 2014, it's not really much. And also in 2014, the number of new ransomware families is in the dozens. That tripled in 2015, and what you see here in 2016 is not complete stuff list. It's also, this is the more or less complete. It's more than 200 new families in 2016. So in total, there were at that time 491 different ransomware groups, this was really, everybody was trying ransomware. So before that, people were doing banking Trojans. So the cybercrime crypto business models were quite complicated, and there was and banking Trojans were the most prevalent stuff. Exploit kits and distributing malware, but how to get the money out of it, and ransomware came up as a really new encryption, a really new cybercrime business model, and yeah, and everybody tried it. That's what you see in these lists. Everybody, and they all had to go through that stuff. There were incredibly dumb ransomwares in it. So some of them encrypted files and sent the key through a get parameter in the URL. So if you looked at your web browser history, you had the key. Yeah, some of them were hard-coded in the binary, and so really stuff that is not really cryptography, just obfuscating files. It's not really encrypting it. But the groups that remained, they really learned their lessons, and we will follow that in a minute. So one of the group that was using or was trying the stuff was based on a lot of open source ransomware. You could download the source code, and there were plenty of different families that were derived from that. Some of the bigger, the best known are Brazilian and hidden tier. They were supposed to be test ransomware so that you can see what your system is doing, and the encryption was weak by purpose, or weak on purpose, because they didn't want to damage stuff, and all of these open source ransomware tools can be decrypted with very simple tools. But some of the people learned their lessons and really replaced the crypto functions with stuff that is sort of crypto wall, for example, with stuff that works. Okay, then they came up with not just encrypting the files on the hard drive, but just infecting the network drives, the NAS systems, so there was use an exploit in one of these systems to get access to the files and encrypted everything, then instead of having access to your files, you were asked to download and install a Tor browser, go to a Tor page, and transfer an amount of money to get your data back. Yeah, and so another thing that became, so that, yeah, Chimera is a thing that came up in 2014, 2015. It was different in terms of, it did not only decrypt your files, it also store your data. So it downloaded data, photos, videos, and if you were not paying, they threatened to publish your data with your name on the internet. So this is something. This is not really new, but this is something that is popping up. That's coming up in the industrial business at the moment. So if some of the families that are active at the moment are doing just the same. They are not only encrypting the files, they also steal data and threaten to publish it. Okay. So let's go just to see the range. So I picked out some of the families with some specific features. So the Archiveus, quite an old one in 2006, used pharma shop orders as a payment method. So obviously the guy behind it was participating on that shop, or was earning on yeah, anyway, but so yeah, so it's an exceptional payment method. Link up is something that is also in the Arsenal 2014. It blocks internet access and asks a ransom for your getting your internet access back. So nowadays, blocking internet access is something that ransomware authors do when everything is encrypted. So if you have if the system has no internet access, there's no way to easily fix it. Yeah, we've talked about Cryptolocker. The Vault Crypt thing is it used GPGX. So GPG is open source encrypting software, a very legit piece of software. Everybody who wants to encrypt files is using this this command line executable, and Vault Crypt just does the same. It downloads that file to the system and then encrypts all the files. So it's a living off the land thing that we are now seeing in targeted threats. But you see, it's not new. Yeah, encryptors, ransomware as a service, Locker. Locker is interesting because so if you are someone who is asking a ransom and is extorting people, then you have to have a very tough mindset. And that guy was obviously not made for that, because after a while he apologized and released all keys so that people could get their files back. He obviously had quite some contacts with victims that were very unhappy, and yeah, Chimera, we've seen it. So and then there's stuff written in PowerShell. It's Unix, it's OS X, it's Android, and yeah, it offers live chat support. Ransom 32 is another multi-platform thing because it's written in JavaScript. CTB Locker offers to decrypt 5 files to prove the capability that they are able to decrypt the files before you pay the ransom. These guys really go for service, because if you are facing that thing and you have to pay an amount of bitcoins, and you've never done that before, you really don't know what to do. And they noticed that, and that's why they offered support, and they also they had help pages on their websites, yeah, they did a lot of stuff to make people pay. Yeah, the decryptor didn't work. Jigsaw is another thing. So every hour it deletes 100 files. So that should increase the pressure to pay. And if you switch off your system, it deletes 1,000 files. Yeah, server is using text-to-speech software. Is using text-to-speech software to speak with, or to make an audio note about its activities. Kimsil is attacking Magento web shops, and it's encrypting the web shops and asking ransom for that. So it's not files, but it's access to the web shop, which is in 2016 some of the things that where people thought, oh, let's see what we can do, how we can get into into business where more money is being made. Yeah, the chiffre is used in targeted attacks, and another thing is mimicry. So these in 2016, I've shown the numbers. Locky was one of the most prevalent cryptolockers at that time, and AutoLocky just looked like it. It just imitated the dialogues and the look. But in fact, it was a raw archive with a simple password, so it didn't do anything. And it was an AutoIT script using RA to encrypt data. Not really rocket science. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then came Petya and Mischa. Petya was one of the more advanced threats. It didn't encrypt single files. That what a later addition to Petya did, the so-called Mischa. Petya and Mischa. They are two rockets in the GoldenEye James Bond movie, and Mischa is the file encryptor, which is just a standard file encryptor. But Petya is really was different and was a game changer. So it overrides the master boot record and also encrypts the master file table, which means the files are still on your drive, but the inventory where the hard drive can get access to the files is deleted. So they're still there, but nobody knows where. And in order to get your master file table back, you have to pay a ransom. The way that worked is an application. This is a German sample, and I don't know how fluent you are in German, but this is there's nothing weird about that. It's well written. It's stylistically okay. There are not. I think there's a single typo, which can happen in a thing like that, and in the end, it says the complete application come on, folder is in my Dropbox because the file is too big for emails. Please, sorry for that. And then it has a link. And if you click on that link, it looks like that. And then you see that there's a Bewerbungsmappe pdf.exe. And this is the only thing where if you ignore the .exe thing, so it's there, it's visible. If you click on it, you're doomed, because what happens then? The system is restarting, pretending to repair something, but but actually it's deleting the MBR and overriding the MFT. And then it has this very nice screen that that is a reminder of the old DOS MBR viruses that also had this funny funny animations. Yeah. You get some advice how to get your data back. And if you go to the site, they try to prevent us from automatically analyzing it by using a captcha. And then it tells you that you have 7 days time to pay, and if you are not doing that within that time, the price will double. Yeah, that was quite effective. The encryption behind Petya was really well done. So the people behind it were really very educated, high-tech developers. They knew exactly what they did. The only thing they did was they didn't use the full 64-bit key. They just used the 32-bit key, and that's why the decryption key could be brute forced. So there, a tool was created that could brute force the key for the first time. But once they learned about it, they fixed it, and the next version of Petya had the full encryption with no way to get to get the files back. Yeah, so that thing is so with addressing people in the HR department that who get applications like that every day, and they click on they used to click on it. This is something that is still a very common way to infiltrate companies and to infect companies' networks. So that this is yeah. So that's what Petya is about, and sending applications is still one of the most effective threat infection vectors. Yeah, then in 2017 we had WannaCry. This is when things, yeah, WannaCry used a vulnerability in the Windows SMB interface. So SMB is where the shared files in your network are located. So that's the protocol behind shared files. And the Eternal Blue, Eternal Blue is one of these. Is one specific exploit which has been quite effective because it has been used in the Equation Group. Equation Group is a US-based hacking team. They used these 0 days for espionage, but they were hacked by the shadow brokers, and the shadow brokers leaked all their tools. And the cyber criminals used all the stuff from that leak to a lot of stuff from that leak and implemented it into malware, and Eternal Blue was really one of the most effective things that came out of agencies' inventory. The problem with that thing is there was an error, the so-called error in the cache-out process. So it had one key for all victims. But the victims cannot be unlocked. And the victims cannot be unlocked separately. So it's really not made or tested for earning money. And yeah, that's that's a thing behind that is suspicious, because well, usually this is the most important point in one of these malwares, and it also contained a domain name which looked quite strange, and which was used to check whether the sample is run in a sandbox, because if that sandbox, in sandboxes, if you analyze malware, in simple cases, if the malware is asking to get a connection to a website, the systems are isolated, but there's an HTTP server which sends back a 200 OK, which means established connection established. And in that case, the WannaCry malware supposes that it's running in a sandbox and stops running. And one guy, Michael Hutchinson, registered this domain, and then all the files in the world outside there got 200 OK. They could connect to the site, and with that thing, the spreading of that worm stopped. And it's, yeah. So that kill switch was something that could, or this feature to evade analysis could be used as a kill switch. Yeah, that thing, coming back to that error in the payment process, that's one of the reasons why this is called, this is attributed to the Lazarus group, which is supposed to work in the North Korean environment. Yeah, okay. So we're entering the realm of industrial control systems, and Stuxnet just is one of the prominent examples. I won't go into details, but just as a reminder, Snowden, Edward Snowden, also with his leaks, he showed us how agencies and how organized and how well how organized agencies are working, and how good they are doing their job. Usually we have so in that targeted attack environment, we usually have a cyber kill chain, which has several steps. It usually has a preparation thing where people look at public information about the company, about people, try to see what the IT infrastructure is. And in the bigger cases, they do on-site observation and even try to become an employee, or yes. So that could be quite quite massive. Yeah. Once everything is prepared, the attack is done. Quite often, social engineering and technical vulnerabilities combined in whale phishing or water holing, whale phishing emails, water holing attacks on websites, or by Trojanized installers. So they, yeah. remote desktop protocol, or yeah, the remote desktop feature of PCs is currently the most dangerous and the most prevalent infection vector. But you could also do USB devices, Android apps, and a lot of other ways to network worms and so on to infect files. Establish, yeah. Once you're in, you're trying to establish and to move on to active. Come on, another typo. To the Active Directory, and once you're on the Active Directory or the domain controller, you have free access to the network. Once you're in the domain controller, it's really it's game off for the defenders. And once they're there, they collect data, they exfiltrate data, and do whatever they want. In case of ransomware, they do encrypt stuff, and before they do that, they wait and look what the backups are. Try to look into emails, see when when there's a good point in time to run the attack. And then another thing, Petya or not, it used the same. It actually used almost the same binary. It had just some minor changes. It looked very much like Petya, but the payment again was crippled. And so the no Petya thing was again something based on or supposed to be related to the Lazarus group. And one of the biggest victims was Maersk. So this is their CEO, the chairman of Jim Snaby. We were probably collateral damage of a state-driven attack. That's what he said in an interview or in a podium discussion at the World Economic Forum. Maersk is a transportation company. So if you look at container transportation with ships and boats, 20% of all containers worldwide are carried by Maersk. So every 15 minutes, a boat and support carrying 10 to 20,000 containers. When they were hit, they had to completely reinstall their infrastructure, which means 4,000 new servers, 45,000 new PCs, 2,500 new softwares, and they did all that within 10 days. And if you ever done system administration, that was obviously a hard job for the people behind it. But that was really necessary because when they were down, they had to come back to a thing that they referred to as human resilience, which means manual processing. And they managed to manually process 80% of all the load, and only 20% of the transport had to be cancelled. And their customers really contributed to handle that. So that's quite some. Jim Hageman called that a significant wake-up call, and he said the security of Maersk was average, and after that thing, he wants the best security, so it is an advantage over competitors. So he didn't want that to be repeated. So they were open from the beginning. That was necessary and helpful. So that open from the beginning means they were talking about it, which is not usual. He said, if you're naive about cybersecurity, you become a victim, even if you are big. and human resilience is no option in the age of digitalization. So you can look at the whole discussion on YouTube. Yeah, so they had massive damages in a two-digit million figure. So that was a real big loss of money. This one thing. So yeah, that's transportation industry. If you look at, so one of the most attacked, if not the most attacked industry is healthcare, and especially hospitals. So there was a report where in the US they said there were 172 different hospitals victim of ransomware, and yeah, that's not surprising, because usually hospitals are small. They're SMBs. They're probably medium businesses, but they're not big, and usually they don't have invested in cybersecurity for decades. So they rather invest their money into new devices for patient treatment, but not into their cybersecurity infrastructure. So the good thing about the Lukas Krankenhaus is that they were quite they were open, and they are still talking about it. Lukas Krankenhaus in Neuss. Neuss is on the River Rhine on the opposite side of Düsseldorf. They were offline for almost a week. They had to cancel 50% of the surgeries. And stopped taking emergencies. So they were forwarded to other hospitals. And they could not order medicine. And the Lukas Krankenhaus at that time was one of the most modern hospitals in Germany. They got an award 3 weeks before the attack. And from one day to the other, they also switched to manual working. And that's especially dangerous for cancer patients, because if they get X-rayed against the cancer, or the cancer is X-rayed, you have to do that on a very regular basis. Otherwise, the treatment is ineffective. So there was a 5-day window to get the systems back up and running, and so we were involved in the case and in the relaunch of the infrastructure. That was close, but we did it. Yeah, cool thing. Another nice, or another thing that you see quite often is that cities are attacked. So one of the cases is Atlanta, 2018, and Atlanta is really a big city, and it's one of the traveling hotspots in the US. So if you do international flights, it's one of the few locations that you can enter the US. The whole city services were offline. They had to work by hand. The Wi-Fi at the international airport was shut down, and all in all, 6 million people were affected. That's quite damage. And Atlanta is not the only city. There's Boston. There are many others. Also in Germany, Gießen recently, or in Berlin, the Kammergericht, yeah. A third of the software was offline or partially disabled. Legal documents were permanently deleted, which is for a city quite hard thing. I mean, usually if you have official documents in a city environment, it's the place where they are, and they're only there. So the recovery cost was 9.5 million US dollar. That's probably, yeah, I mean, that's, having figures in a 2-digit million dollar area is, for big incidents or for big ransomware cases, is not a big, it's not a, come on, it's not a, an issue. Yeah, the ransomware behind it is Samsung. It's well known for brute force attacks to weak RDP passwords. So if you use RDP and have a weak password, it's quite likely that Samsung is finding it. It's attributed to Iranian citizens, but not the Iranian government. And they were really specialized on cities and healthcare cases. Oh, yeah. Ulrich already mentioned the Maersk Hydro thing. They were 35,000 employers in 40 countries. They do aluminium worldwide. And in March 19th, in 2019, they were attacked by ransomware, and the entire organization was affected. And they had to go for manual operation for weeks. So these people work in 40 countries. So worldwide, the whole business was shut down to manual operation. They also decided to be very open in their communication. They also decided not to pay the ransom. And the estimated cost, that's what their report was saying, is in something in between 60 and 70 million euros, where 21 million was covered by an insurance, and probably more insurance payments were open. But so this is so they didn't pay a ransom, but still they had a massive cost with setting up or getting back their infrastructure. The point about Maersk Hydro is that they were not that they had that they had quite elaborate security in place. So the malware or the ransomware that was responsible for the attack is called Locker Gaga. It's quite unknown ransomware because it's really specialized on these high volume victims, and there are just probably not even a dozen of those victims, so they're quite calm. But I mean, if they succeed in getting a ransom, then they get millions. So the way it worked is it was a supply chain attack in December 2018 with an email attachment where an employee of a trusted partner was emailing with Maersk Hydro employee, and the email came as part of a legitimate communication. And yeah, that attachment was executed, and it was a few days later, it was detected by antivirus software, but that came too late because by then it had already infected most of the users and also the admins, and it was able to get, after having admin privileges, it also could get access to the domain controllers. From there, it switched off the security solutions and the backups. And it did that with a legitimate admin account from the network or from the domain admin. So And they also used Active Directory group policies, as for example in scheduled tasks. And if you run a group policy with a scheduled task to deploy your malware, the ransomware, the spyware that is needed to get all the data out, to crawl for passwords and so on. So that was done through group policies, they didn't use CNC, so no point in watching traffic or no suspicious network traffic, and the encryption worked within a few minutes. So that's really very fast. Yeah, and once they're done, they disable all the network cards after the encryption and change the passwords of the local admin account and log off. So it's really hard to reset these systems because you have to go to every single thing, and it's really what was left on the machine is this note, greetings and so on, do not reset or shut down and so on, and yeah. So they got some advice to pay. Yeah. Yeah, the last thing that I just want to mention is, if you read that backwards, it's called Snake. It's a new ransomware seen in 2019, and it's also allegedly linked to Iran. The code contains a branch, especially for industrial control systems. So they are so this type of ransomware and malware is made for infecting industrial control systems. Okay, looking at the time, I will skip a few of these things because this is about the most. Yeah, I mean, Sodino Kiwi is one of the most prevalent malware families at the moment. It is using a good mix of different ways to spread, like email, malvertising, exploits. So it's really widespread. Whereas the other very prominent thing is called Reorg. It comes with Emotet and TrickBot, usually in a package. Usually Emotet is doing the distribution. Once Emotet gets active, it's downloading the TrickBot thing, which is doing data stealing, passwords, network information, and then it's doing the lateral movement until it gets access to the file servers and the database servers and so on. And once TrickBot has made access to these systems, Reorg is doing the encryption, and it's usually manually enrolled through Active Directory. So that's another prevalent thing. Yeah, these two families, Reorg is currently concentrating on high volume companies with a lot of employees. So they really concentrate on high not on the SMB, but more on the enterprise level, and whereas the Sodino Kiwi is more related to the small and medium, basically medium businesses. Yeah, the point is to pay or not to pay. If you pay, you do support the criminals. You should not do that. But if you don't have backups, you don't have choice. You don't have choice. And I mean, if you looked at what Maersk did, they they didn't pay, but still, once the files are encrypted, even if you pay and get a tool that is decrypting your data, it's not like snip and then everything's working again. You still have to manually recover the systems. You still have to decrypt the files in a fashion, in a semi-automatic fashion, which usually takes a while. And yeah, but also if you have a bigger company, usually it's not one single key that helps you. It's usually several keys, which means paying several ransoms. And the decrypting is really tedious work. Usually the payment is done in Bitcoins, which is something like 97 to 99%, but and the average downtime is 15 days. So that's, if you are preparing for a ransomware attack, this is what you should take into account. And the other thing is, more and more families switch to data exfiltration. Maersk is the one that started with it, and they have been doing it for quite a while. But so Kiwi, Doppelpaymer, and a lot of other families are just following, and they exfiltrate data so that they can sell the passwords in underground forums, so they have already earned something, even if the people don't pay the ransom. But also they can use the data to threaten the company, to publish information about customers, publish secrets, and probably the information is more worth than setting up the infrastructure. Okay, how to cope with it? Last slide. There are basically three things that you can do, three levels that you can work on. The first is technology, and systems, but do backups, put them offline, or save them in read-only mode so that they cannot be altered after by ransomware. Patch your systems. If you use RDP, don't use RDP if you if you need it, and if you do it in a secure way. Use long passwords. Use two-factor if it's possible. Secure your endpoints, antivirus, endpoint protection, do system hardening, do network isolation, and know your infrastructure. And isolation also means running VMs, so that's part of system hardening. The other thing is processes. So make sure that access management, that your employees only have access to the files and not network areas where they really need to, and that's especially true for the Active Directory, because this is where all the APTs are going to, no matter whether they do ransomware or not. Be prepared, have an emergency plan, train it. Also, imagine it's Friday afternoon. That's usually the time when they start the attack. Go in a training scenario with all the people and do it. And just do red teaming, blue teaming stuff so that you are prepared when it is once the case comes. And two sides, if you have a ransomware, if you have a file or if you have the node and so on, you want to know whether there are tools that you can deal with, you can go to one of these two websites. And last but not least, people. So that's the third big thing. It's just one bullet point, but awareness is really a big topic, and Instead of having a layer 8 problem or the problem in front of the PC, make sure that your employees are building a human firewall. Okay. Yeah, thank you for your attention.
That was a lot, Ralf.
Thank you.
But great. The next picture is that you in a couple of years' time, that you use your AI engines to put a fast forward on your picture.
Sorry.
The next slide. The next slide is that you in a couple of years?
No, that's no, not really. It's a different person, but I mean, so we made that claim that we are respecting the German privacy rules, and this is
data protection. So wow, I think if we would do the same in a couple of years' time, it probably will take you 2 hours to go through the history of the ransomware.
Yeah, it's really hard to. I mean, I dropped so much. I mean, there were so many things, interesting things that happened. But I mean, I wanted to focus on the stuff that has a relation to the ICS or to industry things. And yeah, it's. I mean, they are. So IT and OT are merging together, and OT is becoming more of a target, and ransomware is currently the most. Okay, is that your side?
Yeah, it's mine. Yeah, it's coming from my side.
I have the website open. If you want, I can go through it and explain it a little bit.
Yeah, that would be great because. Yeah, you had it on your slide, but I think it has to be no more ransom.
If there's a little bit of time, I can.
Yeah, I guess I had a couple of questions, and well, that's a good thing about these webinars. We can just run over time because we then afterwards can just fast forward.
Just if you come to the if you enter the website or the domain name nomoreransom.org, you can choose your language, and you see it's a lot of them. It's nice. I pick with English. And then, so if you need help with your digital life without paying your attackers, and then you can say yes, no. If you say yes, you see a form where you can upload some files and also upload the ransom node. And if you then press go find out, it will try to identify it will try to identify the family, and you see there's a long list of decryption tools. If it can identify one of these tools, then you see that there's a how-to guide. I have no idea what's coming up now, but
so the situation is if you've
it's quite so if it can be identified, it's quite easy. So it's straightforward. So it's really easy to handle, and they don't share information with So it's safe to use.
Okay, got it. So but this would be in case that a company has basically figured out that it has been infected with ransomware. When the ransomware starts to operate, and you see the screen of death there, and then basically you can basically react on this by taking a copy of the encrypted file. That's basically what you have to do.
Exactly.
Right.
You upload. You upload a copy of the encrypted file. And also a copy of the ransom node. That file that tells you you have been owned. All your files are encrypted and belong to us. And if you want them, pay 2 Bitcoins.
Yeah.
That ransom note is also something that is usually quite typical for a group of attackers.
Would you recommend people
combination of encrypted files, so the way they are encrypted is something that gives a lot of indicators, and also the ransom note itself gives you a lot of indication, and you probably can find out what group is behind it and then see what you can Google.
So would your advice be, in case that you have something like this, is to use the same machine and then to go to no more ransom? Or would you advise to take another machine, or maybe still find a specialist that can help you with doing this stuff?
I mean, usually if you're in a company, usually the way to get your data back is or what has to be done to get your data back is quite difficult. It's not just paying a sum of bitcoins, but it's a lot more, and usually it's advisable to get in touch with people who have been doing that several times and get advice from those people. So my team or the G Data Advanced Analytics team is quite often involved in cases like that and has been handling ransomware cases quite often in several industries.
Yeah.
And usually it's advisable to get in touch with security experts yeah. And that's also part of the preparation. It should be part of the emergency plan, that you know who you're contacting, and this is not only the people in the company that you need, the system administrators and probably the financial and law departments, but also the security experts. So that's also
yeah. So best in any case to get some additional assistance. Would you recommend that people, if they have something like this, to reach out to law enforcement immediately as well?
Sorry.
Would you recommend, if people have a case of ransomware, that they would be advised to go to law enforcement as well?
Yes, usually it's. I mean, if you don't, I mean, it depends on your law enforcement. So usually law enforcement can help you a lot with. I mean, it really depends on who you ask. So I just can tell you from Germany. But if you go to the federal states departments, if you just go to the police station around the corner, so they can't really help you. They don't understand.
Yeah.
There are special forces within the federal criminal agencies, and also the German criminal agency, the BKA. They also have of course, specialists that can help you very well.
But the case would in any
getting
case
in touch with those is also something that is recommended. But that's also something that the security specialist could help you with, because it's part of their work, also part of our work to get in touch with law enforcement.
But in any case, the better thing to do is to still go to law enforcement and report the case that this has happened to you. I mean, in any case, for them also to further follow it along. I think the other interesting thing, and you mentioned it yourself as well, is the suggestion not to pay the ransom. Like you said, it's not giving you direct access back to your files. You'll get a blob of data back that is completely unorganized, and so it actually doubles the cost. I think that was also one of the interesting findings of the colleagues from Sophos, that on top of the ransom that you paid, you still need to invest quite a lot in trying to get the files restored to the right place and making sure that you have your stuff back in order. So I think that was also one of the recommendations there.
Yeah, the bad thing about the development is that these ransomware actors at the moment are really specialists. So they're really working on a very advanced level. It's I mean, so 5 years ago, when ransomware started, I mean, these commodity ransomware things that I've talked about, they also hit companies. And this was quite cheap reminder that they had to invest into IT security. And if they didn't do, they have to pay the price now. And I mean, it's really, I mean, this ransom thing, you also mentioned the numbers, is 50% of the companies who are affected. So it's, you know, it's gambling. If you're not investing into IT security, then you're definitely going to become a victim. And the bad thing about that Maersk hydro thing is that the really advanced attackers, they can even trick you if you have high security measures in place. And if you have industry like aluminium production, or if you're working in a critical industry, then you have to really make sure that everything is up, that you have a high level of security measures in place, and that you are prepared for ransomware attacks.
Yeah, I guess. The other thing is, of course, as you mentioned, that we see much more industrial systems. I think we also saw that in the numbers, basically, that much of those ransomwares are maybe not so much targeted in the way that they are being deployed, but they are targeted in the way that they are being developed and written, that they are specifically focusing on those machines that are really very sensitive and critical for an industrial production. It's also the reason, of course, having this conversation here. I think an interesting addition here is that because we often hear that those ransomwares are considered by, for instance, media as an attack, but I think it's very important for people to know and to understand that the business model behind the ransomware developers and exploiters is not so much a specific target. Usually, it's really trying to get as much as possible a quite large group of companies through phishing attacks, through spear phishing, even in this case, and just dropping the payloads to a maximum number of organizations and trying to reap the benefits out of those. So their business model is really based upon volumes and trying to get the best out of those. So I think that's something that sometimes people tend to forget because they say then, yeah, but who are we? We are just a small factory and nobody's really after us in terms of hijacking us or no, I think every company, as the figures have already shown, are really a potential victim.
Yeah, that's, I mean, if you really believe that you have no interesting data, if someone with a ransomware comes around the corner, you might probably notice that you still have interesting data. But even if you don't have interesting data, they can still use your machines and do crypto mining and other and there are other business models that they can that they can use to and they can send spam and stuff like that. So that's you know, they can abuse your infrastructure.
Ralf, I'd say let's round up here. Thank you very much again. Second week in a row. I'm going to leave you at rest a little bit for the next coming week, but I'm sure that we will be meeting again somewhere soon, somewhere hopefully also face to face again in the near future. So thanks in any case for sharing your viewpoints and your ideas. And definitely also great, and definitely also try to stay safe and secure here. So let me maybe round up here by giving some other thoughts and ideas, and also the way that we are handling our activities, because this is really part of our industrial cybersecurity components, but within the domain of industry, we also try to do a lot of support towards how to do the digitalization of companies. We do that under the brand name and the umbrella of TRIF. And so tomorrow we'll have yet another of our activities in TRIF, industrial IoT and industrial digitalization together with Microsoft. And then on Thursday, we'll have another webinar together with PwC on the developments of identity and access management, which is also popping back quite heavily. So identity and access management culture, specifically also in the domain of industrial and bringing IoT devices into the network. And so how to manage devices, how to manage basically identities of persons and mixing them with devices. So some interesting topics coming up. And then quickly afterwards on Thursday noon, we'll be having some best practices from the Netherlands in this case, an organization called CIP with Walter van Wijk, who are collecting about 600 public authorities and private organizations, bringing different tools and technologies to support them in their GDPR challenge. And so we'll be listening out there what the Netherlands is doing and how the Netherlands is and Dutch companies are actually trying to cope with GDPR, for instance, also in the Netherlands. So a bit of best practice sharing across Europe, I would say. And then next week, we'll have another of our cybersecurity experts from home with one of the, probably one of the best hackers in the world, Inti de Kerkelere from Belgium, who's working with one of our members, Integrity, and who has been recently awarded again as Inti DC, as one of the top hackers from the different contests. So he will be showcasing again some of his recent weak links and the things that are actually so easy for all hackers and people to use that at least we should pay some additional attention to them. So with this, I would say thanks again a lot to participate here. We'll continue working on the different challenges in relation to cybersecurity and industrial cybersecurity. And thanks for keeping up. Thanks for participating. And hope to see you soon again in one of our next and upcoming webinars. So also from Leuven, all the best in Bochum and the rest of the world. Thank you very much, Ralf, again, and hope to see you soon in one of our next sessions. Bye-bye.